Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, sponsored by the Draft Professors. Joined today by Draft Professors Ben and Tyler. And Ben, this is your first Draft Professor podcast. I want to say welcome to the channel. How are you doing?
Not so bad. I'm excited to get started. Did a lot of work on these cornerbacks the last week, and I would love to talk about them.
Cool. And Tyler, you and I were chatting a little bit backstage. What is your initial impression of this cornerback class?
Yeah, I was telling you, I think there's a clear tier one of specifically two, maybe even a third guy that could sneak in there. And then it's a lot of really similar grades. And so diverse skill sets, they're not the same player, but just, hey, they're all about that same level in terms of skill, in terms of where you would be comfortable drafting them. And so I agreed with you completely when it came to, I think this is a draft with a lot of good CB2s, maybe a lot of good guys are going to rotate into your nickel, especially with the way the league's going, where you're trying to play nickel to these bigger packages and just have 5 DBs out there as much as humanly possible. I think there's a lot of good there. There's just not really a Derek Stingley. There's not a Sauce Gardner, Pat Surtain, name your favorite corner one in the league right now, defensive player of the year type guy. That kind of talent I don't think is in this draft, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of good players that can really help teams.
Yeah, for the most part, I agree with you for sure. Yeah, I like how well-rounded the class is in terms of positional versatility. Like, I think there's a good chunk of startable outside cornerbacks and also a really good chunk of guys that could also play in the nickel as well, like you mentioned.
Yeah. So, Ben, who is your CB1?
CB1 for me is Jermod McCoy. That has not changed since last year. Yeah, I mean, he's just on a different level athletically. He's got that short area burst and the long speed that you like from a cornerback, super fluid hips. When I initially watched him last year, I did not know his arms were going to measure in that long. He hasn't measured in yet at the combine, obviously officially, but he's reported to have about like 32-ish inch arms. And that's obviously very long for a cornerback. So he's got that kind of range. He's got that kind of length. And also he's got the IQ. I mean, that click and close speed that he's got in zone to just break down on the ball. He has a tremendous impact on the catch. Like, there's literally not much that you could say that's negative about Jermod McCoy.
Yeah, and Tyler, where did McCoy end up for you? Is he one of the two guys that you have at the top?
Yes, so he is my second, but in terms of grade, he is the same as Mansour Delane, who I have at my number one. It's just the ACL injury, right? So he didn't play at all. He tore his ACL in January, and so I will unfortunately not be getting his medical report from the combine. So, you got some question marks there, but agree with everything Ben said in terms of just pure, when you watch his 2024 tape, there is so much good there. He's the most explosive, I think, of this class. It's actually probably him and his teammate Colton Hood in terms of just getting in and out of breaks, very snappy. They're the top two that I see in this class. Really good athlete, solid tackler as well, which I was very impressed with. It wasn't really something that I thought coming in, but he went from an 11% missed tackle rate in 2023, that was his freshman season at Oregon State, down to 7% in 2024. He went from 3 stops, which is a tackle at or behind the line of scrimmage that results in an unsuccessful play for the offense. He went from 3 in 2023 to 11 in 2024, and he's doing this against SEC competition. So that is really important, I think, when you talk about corners in this day and age in general. Obviously, you are drafting them to be cover guys. You're not drafting them to tackle. But teams in the NFL right now, a lot of what they do is forcing corners to tackle. The Bills, actually, Jim, are one of my favorite teams that do this. Their run scheme is so good. We're going to wash everybody down. James Cook is going to be one-on-one with the corner, and you're going to have to consistently tackle. I think McCoy can do that. Ben already hit on a lot of his good cover stuff. I think the 2 things that I had for him was plays on his heels and press a lot. I would like to see that clean up because it gets him beat, and it leads to him getting a little bit grabby. So that would be my other thing is he loses a little bit of poise when he feels uncomfortable, and that resulted in 8 penalties in that 2024 year. So clean that stuff up, and I think that's good, right? You want to clean up your technique because he's got that athleticism there, and that is something you just can't teach.
Yeah, and he's just like a super physical guy too. You brought it up with the tackling. I think that aggression and that physicality, it translates not only to the tackling, but in his play, and unfortunately also to the penalties that you mentioned. But I mean, yeah, if we're talking about negatives here, it's nitpicking, really. Like I think his tape from 2024 was superb, and I agree with you about the medicals. That's what's stopping me from putting him up there with some of those other guys you mentioned, like Stingley or Sauce or whoever you like, Devin Witherspoon from previous years.
Mhm.
It's the fact that we didn't see him play. We didn't see him back it up 2 years in a row.
Well, and I think the main point on McCoy is that if McCoy did play in 2025, he's probably not getting out of the top 5 in this draft class. I mean, he would be almost the definition of a blue chip.
If the play remains the same.
Yeah. So then I guess we should maybe spend a little bit of time on McCoy. McCoy, I believe, tore his ACL at the very end of the 2024 season.
Yep, it was January of 2025. So in the playoff game, I think.
In the playoff game. So, and at this point, he is 13 months removed from the injury, which is different than last year where Siobhan Revel tore his ACL in the middle of the year and went in round 2. And then Benjamin Morrison had a hip injury. And I don't know if Morrison went in round 2 or round 3.
Round 2, because he went to the Bucks at about 50-ish.
Yeah. So how do you, like, in your head from a where is Jermod McCoy going to be drafted, Tyler? How do you resolve you're 15 months away from an injury by the time you're drafted versus you're only 6 months removed from the injury? How does that weigh into where you think McCoy ultimately gets drafted?
Well, that's why I still think he could go top half of round 1. If he tore this in, say, the second game of this year, I do think that puts him in the back end of round 1. I don't think he would fall like Revel to round 2, just because I think his tape's better, his athleticism better, higher pedigree playing in the SEC. But because it's so far removed, I mean, unless something goes wrong and there's a set, I was trying to see if there were any setbacks online. It didn't seem like it, just in terms of his recovery and his rehab. So I got to think he's going to be able to play this year. So you're really not even losing much other than just, will this actually drain his explosiveness? And again, that's where it'll be those physicals, and our team's comfortable doing that. I'm sure that some teams won't have him on their first round board just because they're scared off by the knee, but I think he should be fine.
Ben, do you think Jermod McCoy is a full go for training camp?
You know, I'm not sure, but it's reported that he is going to be testing at the combine. So I think that's going to be big. If he tests well at the combine, like everybody expects him to,
I was like, which he should. He should be a fun one.
Yeah, I'm just excited to watch him move around. Like, we haven't seen this guy on a field of any sort in over a year. So I'm excited to watch him move. And I think, yeah, this far removed from the ACL tear, I would assume he would be good for training camp at this point. And especially if he's able to participate in the combine testing like is expected.
Yeah, so I have like a saying, and anybody that's watched the channel for a couple of years will know, I'll say, when you're drafting a player like McCoy, I can give you a profile of the GM that's going to draft him. The GM will not be on a hot seat, and it will not be a first-year GM. It's going to be a GM that has been on the job for a year or two and has a little bit of job stability. So if he has to wait for McCoy to be ready, he can. Whereas, like, if you just think about maybe some of the teams where that GM hasn't made the best picks recently. Now, granted, Greer's already been fired. So, like, I don't think he's going to Miami because Miami has a first-year GM, and I don't know that you take that risk. You don't want your first draft pick ever as a GM of a team to not play because of injury. That you would just go down in infamy. And GMs do play. I think GMs play that game.
Yeah, well, and you know who I would love for him to go to that I think meets a lot of that? The LA Rams at 13. I think he is right there in terms of his grading, where he's at in this class, stacked up against other positions. And you're talking about a GM that has a really long leash, a head coach that has a really long leash, and a team that just really needs corner. They're playing Emmanuel Forbes right now at outside corner. No shade to Emmanuel Forbes, but just not a very good DB room right now. And I think he's exactly what they would need. I would love to see that to 13. I think that's just a great fit.
Yeah. Follow up to another team, I think the Chiefs. That's another landing spot. Yeah. They've been playing Jalen Watson as their secondary boundary guy for a while. And McDuffie likes to play the slot. I think taking a guy like McCoy could free you up to play McDuffie out there more often than you probably could, because you want him against your number one guys. But if you have another alpha dog who's able to line up against those number one guys, I think that's just going to make your defense a whole lot better. And they have that kind of stability and continuity that I don't think is going to change with GM and coach.
Yeah, and it would be like, so the Browns have Andrew Berry. I would say, like, for me, like, Andrew Berry's on a hot seat. I don't know that Andrew Berry could afford to take a first-round pick that doesn't pan out, for example.
Probably not.
Right. I think, like, Andrew Berry's seat is hot. Now, like, I'm a Bills fan. Buffalo doesn't need a corner, but wow, if McCoy fell all the way to 26, that's something I could see. I actually think Brandon Beane has more stability than the media gives him credit for, but that's a debate for a different podcast. Tyler, who is your CB1?
So that's going to be Mansour Delane, as I talked about. Both those guys I have as 6'6s, which if you go to the Combine website, that just means basically they have it listed as boom or bust potential. I don't really like how they list that, but basically a very solid player could come in day one and be at least a replacement level starter and then develop into a very good starter. Love so much of what he does. I wrote down after scouting him, he's not elite in anything, but he's a 7 or 8 out of 10 in everything. And so that just lines up to making him a really good player. I don't think he's going to test amazing at the Combine. He has good but not great size. His hips, good but not great. Technique is probably the best, I would say, because I would say his technique is very good. Ball skills, whatever you want to do, acceleration, anything that you list out, I'm going to go, yeah, it's probably a 7 or 8 out of 10. And that just stacks up to being a player that is worth taking in the top half of this first round.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I disagree also that he's not elite at anything. I think his instincts are pretty darn elite.
Like that's fair. Yeah,
when he sees the football in the air, he wastes absolutely no time triggering downhill and getting a hand on the ball. And, he's got the length limitations, but they don't show up on tape. Like, I know he had the 2 down seasons at VTech, but he came out swinging this year with LSU. And that does worry me a little bit, the inconsistency, but not so much. And another thing I love is just how quick, another thing with the triggering down, he squeezes routes so quickly as well. Wastes no time. There is no wasted time in Mansour Delane's game. And he is also another very aggressive guy. Like, I loved, he was probably my favorite tape that I watched this year, considering I didn't watch Jermon McCoy this year, obviously.
Yeah, I wrote he doesn't panic when the ball is in the air. Very comfortable, just sticking with the receiver. He's not grabby. He's not, holding on to shoulder pads, trying to feel where the receiver's at. He's able to find the ball in the air very, very well. And that gave him a 31% forced incompletion rate. That's 3rd in all of FBS this year. So he is making a ton of plays on the ball. The only other negative I had for him was that in press, his feet get outside of his frame a lot. And it leads to guys beating him, especially inside, more than he probably should for a guy that otherwise just has very, very good technique. And so clean that up, man. And I think he's a guy, I've seen him going to the Giants at 5. I don't think that's a bad pick because he is just such a solid guy that can be a really, really good corner for a long time.
I agree. The vertical speed. Sorry, you go ahead.
No, that's all right. So, Tyler, that's interesting because you've already then pivoted to like what my next question was going to be is how high could you see Mansour Delane going? And you have him graded where if the Giants took him at 5, you wouldn't be surprised.
No, I really wouldn't because we'll see when I get through every single position and stack up a top 50, top 100 kind of thing. But at this point, just grading him out, he's probably going to be a top 10 player for me. I would think top 15 at worst. And so then when you factor in positional value, what the Giants need, and just that even if he is, say, my 13th, there's not going to be a ton of separation between the 13th player, I think, in this class and like the 6th player in terms of, that's such a reach. So I think he could work his way up there. I just pulled up Tankathon to see the draft order to make sure I didn't miss anybody. I mean, Washington, you talk about a team that could really use a corner. I think that would be solid. We talked about Kansas City already if they just prefer Delane at 9. Washington's at 7 as well. So I think any of those, I guess that range would be something I would be totally fine with.
So Tyler, I think you are bold with how high you're like. I don't know that I've seen other people grade Delane as high as 5th overall in the draft, but that's why we're here is so different people can give their perspectives. I definitely like hearing that. And then, Ben, I'm going to pivot the same question to you. With how you have Mansour Delane graded, how high in the draft would you be comfortable taking Delane?
Me personally, in an ideal draft, which this is not an ideal draft, I agree with Tyler. This is a lot like last year. I mean, I don't know what your opinions were on last year's draft, but I do not think there were 10 top 10 talents in last year's draft. I thought after Will Campbell, it turned into kind of mid first round type guys. That's kind of how I feel about this class, and that's also how I feel about Delane's range. The only hang up I have really with Delane is just the physical traits. Like I was a little concerned with the Texas A&M tape. That's when I kind of learned like, oh, maybe he can't push vertically as well as I would really like him to. With him when he was going up against Casey Concepcion, but I mean that is also one of the fastest guys in the draft, so you can't necessarily be hanging it all up on that eval. But I do think he lacks a little bit of that recovery speed in terms of like if you get beat early in the rep, how well are you able to get back in phase? But he's such an IQ, he's such a high IQ player that he rarely ever gets beat. So I don't know. For me personally, I have a mid first round grade on him. I'd be comfortable in like the 10 to 20-ish range, but I'd likely skew higher with the way this draft is specifically.
And I want to say, I think Daniel Jeremiah, I think, had him at number 5 in his mock draft to the Giants. Lance Zierlein, I believe, also had him at that spot. So it's not completely out of left field. And really, I think I had the same reaction, Jim, when I first saw that, and I had not actually watched the corner class yet. I was like, man, that seems high for him, but I watched and I just got more comfortable with it.
Well, and there was a mention, I think, Ben, you were the one that brought it up about like last year didn't have 10 top 10 talents. The logic, and I'm trying to remember, with the Browns were the team that traded down in the top 5 last year, right? And the logic that was given was that they were only going to trade down maximum 2 spots because they wanted to make sure that they got either Mason Graham, Travis Hunter, and was the other one Will Campbell? I think those were the only, like, if the Browns are going to pick one of those 3 guys, and they couldn't drop down further because the drop off after those 3 was significant.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. So Tyler, CB3 for you is drumroll.
Yes, let's pull this up. I got Chris Johnson, corner, San Diego State. Really liked a lot of his tape, especially the Cal tape was very, very good that I watched, and then the Washington State tape, as well as the Senior Bowl. I liked a lot of what he did at the Senior Bowl, the one-on-ones. There was one rep he got beat by Tyron Montgomery, the guy out of D3, John Carroll. Other than that, it's a lot of really good. He's long. He plays zones very, very well. He basically, when I think of Chris Johnson, it's like, okay, this is the corner that NFL teams are looking for. They're playing 70% zone on average, and he is so good there. His eyes are always in the right spot, which allows him to pass off routes or come down on routes very, very quickly, which makes up for, I would say, not elite quickness for a longer guy, but even for a taller guy, he's able to really sink his hips very well and get out of it to make up for just not having the raw athleticism. And that's one of the knocks, as well as his ball skills. He just doesn't, I don't know why, because he's a taller guy, he's a longer guy that I already talked about. He seems like he can jump pretty well. I guess we'll find that out at the combine. But when it comes to just these jump balls, like he got mossed against Cal, and then that Senior Bowl rep I talked about was Montgomery going up and being able to grab it over top of him. But just, I love his technique. I love how he plays in zone. And there's a lot of good things there. Also a really good tackler as well. I got to pull up his tackle stats as I'm talking here, but a really physical guy out on the edge. The only other knock as well is that the competition was not amazing playing for San Diego State. So that's why I watched Cal a little, one of those Power 4 teams, and had a pretty good passing game. And that made me more comfortable, as well as the Senior Bowl, right? He didn't go out there and look like he was out of place. He actually looked very good. And so love a lot of what he has there. And that's why he's my number 3 corner.
Yeah, I will say, I went back to the Senior Bowl tape. I expected to not be thrilled with Johnson, but I actually was. I thought he mirrored really well. He did have the one rep against Tyron Montgomery, but that was just, I think that's more of a one-off type deal. Like that was incredible, like body contortion by Montgomery to go grab that ball. And I thought he hounded the catch point pretty well there.
Yeah, because you got to take negative, you're getting mossed, but positive, you were in great position, right? So it's almost like a double-edged sword there.
Yeah. Yeah, you know who Chris Johnson reminds me a lot of is Greg Newsome. I am a Browns fan, so I've seen a lot of Greg Newsome. Like I don't necessarily know if I would love him in a press man scheme, but I do agree with you. I think his IQ in zone in terms of passing off routes, being able to squeeze them with good timing, I think that shows through on his tape 100%. The one thing I worry about a little bit with Johnson is I think his anticipation is a little bit it's like a tick slow. When you get into single coverage situations where it's just time for you to mirror the receiver on tape a lot, I see him just a little tiny bit out of phase with the receiver on route breaks at times. But I also did see reps at the Senior Bowl where I thought he mirrored really well. So he's a guy that I'm very in between on. The lack of competition in the Mountain West, that also kind of, you kind of got to look past that when you watch his tape. But I 100% agree with you. I really do love his tape and zone coverage.
So, Ben, you have Chris Johnson at 7 on your board as I'm looking at it now.
Yes.
Is there anything Chris Johnson can do? Because I believe your grade is also a second-round grade on Johnson, if I'm looking
I have
at
a great cluster of second-round guys.
Yeah. So the question then, Tyler, is your grade on Chris Johnson that he would go in round 1?
I think it would be late round 1, early round 2 for me. And so I don't think we're that far off. I talked about it right when we were talking about this class. This is where my cluster starts of guys that are just very similarly graded, a lot of different styles, because we'll get to how he is different, a lot different than Colton Hood, is a lot different than Keith Abney, some of these guys. So I think this is where it gets really team dependent. If I'm just thinking of off the top of my head, like the Chargers are playing a ton of zone. Well, Jesse Mentor left. The Chargers were playing a ton of zone. So I could see them going, okay, we really like what Johnson does in zone, his intelligence, how he passes off routes. We're not playing a ton of press man. And so that's going to fly him up our board. And that's, I think, why he's got a little bit of an edge over some of these other guys, is because, again, the league is just moving to where they are playing so much zone. And so I would like him to be a better one-on-one corner for sure, just sitting in press and like getting his jam off, turning and staying with receivers. I think that, and then the lack of elite explosiveness and long speed, those are the knocks, right? I think that if he goes to a team where that doesn't matter a ton, then you're going to get a very, very good player. And that's a lot of teams in the league right now.
Yeah. So, Ben, you have 2 more first-round grades at corner. So, like I said, Chris Johnson was your number 7. You want to talk about the next 2 guys, Colton Hood and Avion Terrell, that you have true first-round grades on?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about Colton Hood. So the first-round grades that I have, just to break them down, Jermod McCoy and Mansour Delane, I have like around like a mid 10 to 20-ish range in the first round. Colton Hood, I'd be more comfortable with in the back half of the first round. And Avion Terrell, I think, is more of a late first-round guy. So I do have like kind of sub-tiers to the tiers. Colton Hood rocks. I love him. I love Colton Hood.
He's so fun. He's so fun.
He's physical. He's mean. He does get grabby sometimes. So I guess I'll just lead off with a negative.
Yeah. he grabby. Yep.
Yeah. A lot of that just stems from how physical he is on routes. And there was another cornerback that, like, J.C. Horn was a lot like that coming out as well. If you remember, a lot of the main thing with him, people loved the dog that he had in him, and they loved how well his punches would land when he got him into you, and how well he was able to inhibit routes when they're either coming off the line of scrimmage or trying to break, getting a jab in there. But they were concerned about the grabbiness. But obviously, J.C. Horn, he's been hurt a lot, but when he's on the field, he's been a very good corner.
Baller.
I feel very similarly about Colton Hood. I think Colton Hood is this guy that, he's not going to wow you with that explosiveness or that speed, but he's going to wow you with pretty much everything else. Like, I think he's got the length to play the position. I think he's strong enough to play the position. I certainly think he is good enough at the catch point. He's got like an eye on the back of his head at the catch point. He always seems to find the ball when it's in the air. People talk about his fluidity maybe being an issue. I don't necessarily see that. I think he's just a lankier guy, and it's really the explosiveness that I think isn't there. Like you don't see him as like this guy that's got this elite burst into his like click and close, but I do think in terms of being able to mirror, he has that. And I think he showed that at the Senior Bowl as well. He's another unfortunate casualty of the GOAT, Tyron Montgomery. Like he had the one rep where he lost to Tyron, but like almost every other rep that you see, other than the one comeback where Tyron Montgomery, made him look kind of dumb, he was mirroring super well. The same thing as Chris Johnson. Like, I think he's just a guy that's going to remain in phase all the time. He's going to be a menace at the catch point. I think he's scheme versatile too. That's another thing. I think he shows that kind of IQ that you need to play zone and be able to pass off routes and play with that kind of timing to understand the route concepts that are going on in front of you. He's got that as well. So he's just this all around kind of guy that I really could not get enough of when I was watching.
Yep. And Ben, I think you raise a good point too. When you can identify that a player is scheme versatile, that may be a good indicator of a first round grade or a round 1-2 grade. We talk about this when we break down other positions as well, that if a player can play in more than one scheme, they will likely be drafted higher. So like a great example, different position, but like David Bailey, he's not going to be an edge in every scheme. So for as good as the tape is, he's not going to be on every team's board. Right? Between character and scheme, there's going to be some teams that say, well, David Bailey isn't worth the risk until like round 3 or 4 because he doesn't fit what we usually do. So I love the reference where you think Colton Hood can play in more than one scheme. Tyler, how high do you have Colton Hood graded?
Well, he's right there with Chris Johnson. He's my next corner. So it very, very close, right? I wrote down that he has the quickest drive in this class. It looks like he's playing in 2 times speed when he just puts his foot in the ground and gets downhill. It is fun. I think he could be out of this corner class. I saw somebody talking about guys outside of the top 15 that could move up a lot. He's not outside of the top 15, of course, but I think he's going to light up the combine, and I can see him easily rising into that first round range because teams are going to go, oh my gosh, he's 6 foot. He's 190. He's got 31.5-inch long arms and he can fly. So I really like a lot of what he's got. Well built as well, I put, because you look at these longer guys sometimes and it's like go gadget arms, kind of like honestly my arms where you're like, oh, these really long, not super thick. He's really well built. And I like that a ton in my corners again, because you're going to have to tackle a lot. Trying to think, I wonder if you saw this, Ben. His press technique, I've not seen it. He doesn't move his feet at all. He stands still.
Yeah, honestly, sometimes his feet look a little bit slow when he's in phase as well.
And so I don't know, and I don't think this is a Tennessee thing because McCoy doesn't play press like that. And so I wonder if that's even where it's not that he's laterally slow or that he can't mirror. I'm just like, you're just standing there. You're not even moving your feet at all. And so I think if he gets to a really good DB's coach or a really good defensive coordinator that can coach him up, there's some refinement that needs to happen in terms of his game. We talked about, you talked about the penalties is probably the same thing there. And then I do think some of his off coverage stuff and his zone stuff is not as developed as Chris Johnson, as McCoy, some of these other guys we've talked about. But if you get somebody who can iron that out, you have a really good lump of clay in terms of the athleticism, the physicality, what he already can do at the catch point. There's so much good there to get developed that I could easily see him blowing up the combine, him getting taken late in the first round, and then we look up in 3 years if he goes to the right team and we're like, oh my gosh, how did he go that late?
Yeah. Something else that I like that you brought up is the fact that he's well put together. Like he's not this, go gadget arms.
Dude, he's built like a brick. It's crazy.
Yeah. Some of these cornerbacks, when it comes to the hand fighting, they get moved off the route too easily. Colton Hood would not be that guy.
I wrote down he never gets bullied in the route or in the run game. He is always doing the bullying.
Yeah, he's the bully. Colton Hood's great. And coaches rave about this guy too. Coaches talk about how he's always watching film. He's always like practicing late. I got to get into the exact quotes. I have a list of quotes that I could find them another time. But point is, coaches and teammates have always loved this guy at every stop.
Yep. And then Anthony, I think your point in the chat's good because we'll always talk about the other guy, because I think this happened when Kamari Lassiter was drafted. Like Lassiter was a 4-year starter, but it was actually the corner that was opposite him, I think, that was drafted higher. It's escaping me as to who the other corner was, but there were two corners. Everybody was talking about Lassiter, but it was the guy on the other side that went higher because people were throwing away from Lassiter, and then it was the other corner that was making plays. So, Ben, you have another true first-round grade in Avion Terrell. You want to talk about him?
Yeah, Avion Terrell, the thing that I love about him is really just the movement skills. Like, he's a guy that can play at all three levels of the field. He's got the explosiveness. He's got the long – he's literally got all the cornerback traits. While he doesn't have the stereotypical length that you want in a cornerback, I think he's just very refined in zone coverage, and he's just a guy that's rarely out of position. And another thing I don't usually love about corners is if you're not a guy that's consistently having an impact on the football, but it just wasn't thrown to him a lot this year. And I don't think he's this like big ball skills, like ball production type winner either. I think he's just he's like a bee. Like he's always going to be around you. He's always going to be following you around. And it's just going to be tough to sink one pass. He's just going to be annoying you all game long. Like, why are you here? Why are you there?
Cool. And then, Tyler, how high do you have Terrell grade?
So Terrell is right behind some of those guys that we've already talked about. I have my next two are Braden Cisse and him, both graded the same. I just threw them 5 and 6, so you can interchange those as much as you would like. He is twitchy, right? Like he has a really good control of his body at 180 pounds. Yes. He gets in and out of breaks very well. Like what you said about the zone coverage, I think he has great route recognition, doesn't really miss things. The play that stands out, and this is actually a positive and a negative, so I'll get to both sides, but it's against Louisville. Chris Bell is running this massive over route. He's running to the other pylon at the front of the end zone, and Terrell sees it on the backside of this play and runs all the way to get to that spot. And I was like, man, that's impressive. You have pretty solid long speed. You have that good route recognition. He's not able to make a play on the ball, though, because he is 5'10" and has short arms. Yes. And so it's like, okay, that's the positive of Avion Terrell. And that is very much also in the same vein, the negative in terms of, like you said, not great ball production, probably just because he's a little bit smaller, shorter arms. The one thing that I really love, though, I came into this, as you probably would with any 180-pound corner, and I go, he's just not going to be a great tackler. Dude, he tries his butt off tackling. And so he's never going to be a great tackler. Even when he's making tackles, it's a lot of, hey, a guy's kind of still running through him and picking up an extra 2, 3, 4 yards. But he's making these tackles. He sticks his face in there. 8 forced fumbles over the past 2 years, 5 this past year. So, like, you have to be careful. He's great at that peanut punch. He had one of those in Louisville, too, where a guy, there's 3 or 4 Clemson defenders that are holding this guy up. Boom, comes in and gets a fumble in the red zone. So there's so much good. I just struggle with the physicality that I already mentioned. Chris Bell, again, I'm sticking to the Louisville game because this is the one that he's playing against another, hey, round 1, round 2, round 3 kind of guy. A couple of times he just gets pushed off the break point, right? Chris Bell is 220 pounds. He's very, very physical, and that's where he loses, right? I would like him to be a little tighter out of breaks, right? As a receiver's coming out of breaks, I mean, I'd like him to be a little tighter and stay a little tighter, especially if you are going to be that small. And those are, I guess, the knocks I would have on him. But for a team that is okay with a lot of the smaller corner stuff, he is, like I said, he has such good control over his body, a lot of good there that you can use at the corner position. Yeah.
Fangio scheme's going to love him. Mm-hmm. And you know what I find interesting is while I see kind of a lack of physicality on routes, his run fitting tape, he tries his ass off.
It blew me away. I was so ready to write down, can't tackle. Where are you gonna play him? Because he's not able to make those outside tackles. You can't put him in the slot anymore because people are putting 12 personnel out there and just gonna block him all. And then I was like, no, that's just not true.
Yeah, I definitely think he tries. Like, I don't know if he's gonna be a guy that's gonna be taking on and shedding blocks, even from wide receivers in the NFL. But in college, he really did a great job of that. So if he could just find a way to translate that physicality to being maybe just a little bit punchier when you're one-on-one with somebody, then I think you could be seeing a really good player just because of how crazy the athletic traits are. But he's a guy that I wrote down. I don't think he's an alpha, but I think he'll be a really good number 2. And he reminds me a lot. He reminds me a lot of Asante Samuel coming out. Asante Samuel Jr., who I liked a lot coming out. I don't know what happened to him. I think it might be injuries or something.
I know, because he was playing well even when it started.
I know.
Just
what
fell
happened
off of that. Yeah.
I'm baffled by it, but that's who he reminds me of.
Hey, so Tyler, have we covered your top 5 corners already?
let me just double check, but we've gotten through all of Cisse is the only other one that we haven't talked about yet out of South Carolina. He's kind of the anti-Avion Terrell, which is so funny how I have them right back to back because
I wanted to put him so much higher, man. I could not.
I did too, and there was a lot of good reps, and then there were just some really not good reps, especially against Clemson was the big game that I was watching as I try and scroll and find my notes here to make sure I don't miss anything.
Texas A&M too. He was another Casey Concepcion victim.
Yeah, and that's the guys he's going to lose to, right? Because I don't think he has very good hips. He is not insanely quick. As a bigger guy, he's listed right now at 6'1", 190. I wasn't able to find consistent measurements, but he has dominant wins and bad losses is what I wrote down because he is physical, especially at the line. He is throwing hands. He is knocking dudes off of their releases. You have to be ready to play Brandon Cisse because he's going to make you actually beat him. Now, the problem is when he gets beat, it's pretty bad. Yeah. Don't like the ball skills either. He got I had a couple back shoulders that were just not good plays, especially against Clemson.
Off and on with the ball skills, yeah.
Yeah, and so with Clemson, it was even this wide receiver number 22 who's like a walk-on and just hit him with a back shoulder fade. I'm like, okay, dude, you can't be letting that happen if you're going to be this alpha type corner. We talk about tacklers, though. I think he's probably the best tackler out of the corner group in this class. The Missouri tape. Missouri is one of these teams. They run a ton of wide zone. Ahmad Hardy's a very good running back. We'll be talking about him a lot in the 2027 class, hopefully. But they make you come up and tackle because they're running that wide zone. They're trying to wash everybody out, and they're putting you one-on-one, like I said earlier, like the Bills do a lot. And he was able to get around blocks, and he was able to make really good tackles in that game. I think he can run really well. I love his speed and recovery speed. He's supposed to blow up the combine as well, so I'm interested to see that. This is another guy, though. He's probably, the good way to put it is like the worst version of Copeland Hood in this class, where I think if he goes to a really good DB coach who can coach up some of those technical things that he just doesn't have at this point, he could be a very good player. If he goes somewhere where it's like, if he were to go to the Jets, right, and then Aaron Glenn gets fired next year, and then it's another DB coach, and like we don't really know what we're doing, and we're changing up schemes a ton. I don't see it going well. Exactly, you got to have a plan for him, and so kind of a boomer bust guy here in Brandon Cisse, where there is just some really good plays and really great plays, honestly, on tape, and then there's just some really bad ones as well.
Yeah. So I see it a little bit differently athletically. I think he does have this fluidity that you see it on tape sometimes. And obviously he's got the explosiveness. He's got the speed. Really the thing that I have an issue with is the footwork, 100%. Yep, I think totally. It makes him look so much stiffer than he actually is. Like, first of all, he just plays tall. I think he struggles to get low at times.
Yes, and when I talk about the physicality at the line, I'm glad you brought this up because one of the biggest notes I had was if he doesn't win with his hands, he's not going to win with his feet.
Yeah, and his hands are not married to his feet. You notice it. Like, you'll notice when he tries to jab you on a route or at the line of scrimmage, his feet just stop. They just don't do anything. So then all of a sudden he's struggling to play catch up here, which I believe what happened on the Casey Concepcion rep, if I'm remembering, the one where he just completely overshot him vertically. He got stacked. Like that happens a lot. You know, when he throws his punch, his feet stop. He opens his gait a little bit early, so he gets caught flat-footed a lot on route breaks.
And that's where the back shoulders come into play too, because he's on top of everything.
Yeah.
And so but he's not even to top down it at all.
Yeah. Like, yeah, for me, it's an anticipation thing. It's a footwork thing, but he has crazy traits. Like, I do not think he's a stiff guy. I think he's just got bad technique. If somebody gets in his ear and coaches him, and something else I noticed too, his footwork I thought looked a little bit better in zone than in like true press man situations. So maybe he's getting some headway there. And maybe if he goes to his own scheme, somebody could coach him up well and put him in that scheme that he seems a little bit more comfortable with, where maybe he's able to use that explosiveness to be able to break on the ball and click and close a little bit more instead of having to be in true one-on-one situations with wide receivers all the time. Like there's a lot of what ifs. There's a lot of what ifs with Cisse, but he is such an incredible athlete. I got him lumped in with a lot of these other second-round guys, but I wanted to put him so much higher just because of what he could be.
And real quick, because I think there's some proof of concept there. You know when you're talking who you sound a lot like? It sounds a lot like Nick Immanwori last year. And so, I don't know who the DB coach is for South Carolina. Maybe we need to look into that a little bit, start teaching him up a little bit better there in Columbia. But I think there's proof of concept there where, maybe you're not getting the most amazing coaching job at a place, but you have the traits, you get somewhere where they can take care of it and be a lot better player.
Evan Moore looks more fluid in the league than he looked on tape. I thought he was super stiff on tape.
So, Tyler, you do bring up a good point. So I would say that South Carolina has a type. Because whether you look at Demetrius Knight, Nick Emmanwori, Brandon Cisse, they're getting elite level athletes.
Yes.
And they're getting those athletes ready for the NFL. Right? So it's interesting because, Buffalo's hiring a lot of assistant coaches right now. And specifically on the defensive side, they are going into college football, and they grabbed the defensive coordinator from Illinois is now becoming Buffalo's defensive line coach.
Yep.
And then I think the assistant defensive coordinator came from Oklahoma, right? So they're trying, like, even to your point, right? There are really good positional coaches, whether you want to talk about the Ohio State wide receivers coach or the South Carolina DBs coach. They're doing a few things right.
Yeah, they find freaks because it's interesting. They end up always, South Carolina, being a team that has really, really good top end talent. They got 5 or 6 guys that are dudes, and then it's like, I kind of don't look at the rest of the roster and what we got that's filling the rest of it out.
If South Carolina can figure out how to recruit and coach offensive linemen,
dude,
they would probably be in the playoffs.
They'd be in business, and Spencer Rattler would be a lot happier and less hurt.
Yep. So we've covered, I believe, 6 corners: Jermon McCoy, Mansour Delane, Colton Hood, Avion Terrell, Chris Johnson. Or, to the best of my knowledge, none of those guys are 23 years old. They're either 22 or younger. Correct?
That's correct.
I believe you're right. Yes.
Right. So the reason because I have Ben's board in front of me, we're about to get to some older prospects. And one of the things that it tends to be true is the NFL likes young corners.
Mm-hmm.
The NFL would rather draft you as a 21-year-old corner than a 23-year-old. It's a thing. So, Tyler, who is your 7, 8, 9 that we haven't talked about yet?
Yes, so 7, 8, 9 is going to be Keith Abney II, corner out of Arizona State, Devin Moore, corner out of Florida, and I have in parentheses, and we will get to it depending on the medicals. And then 9 is this older guy that's going to be Keontae Scott out of Miami.
Yeah. Keith Abney's my 5. Who I got at 6. I need someone to talk me off the ledge of Hezekiah Massis. I need somebody to tell me what exactly I'm missing with Hezekiah Massis and why he's not a second-round pick. And we already covered my 7 and 8. We got Chris Johnson.
And then you have D'Angelo Pons there. Yep.
Yes, I do.
So, first of all, I love seeing Massis at 6. You want to meet Clint Goss, who's another draft professor he's been the highest on Massis until I met you, Ben. And
take the trophy.
Right. And that's not, I guess that came out wrong, but it's okay to be high on a player that you like. The issue is, right, that's Cal, right? So how much stock can you put into the Cal tape? Because I've seen some have UDFA grades on Massis.
UDFA grades?
There was a former podcaster on this channel that didn't want to cover him because his grade on him was UDFA, but he's also not podcasting with us anymore for a reason.
Oh my God. UDFA on Hezekiah. Did he watch?
He's even a Browns fan.
Yeah.
Don't you guys have a room or something that you can?
Jeez, man. I couldn't even fathom having Hezekiah Massis as a UDFA. I can understand being a little bit lower, 3rd, 4th round range, maybe, but UDFA is too low. He just everything he does is just okay. So first of all, I just want to
he's got to reset himself after hearing that.
I got him fired up. There we go.
I watched and I loved him. So the strength traits. I'll start off with the negative because I want to really go nuts about the positives. Strength traits really aren't there. I'm curious about the long speed because there are times where it looks like he can really get vertical. There are also times where he's playing at Cal. Who is he meeting that's going to be pushing him vertically? Like I haven't seen a lot of instances where he's really had to go cover a 9 and recover maybe from not being able to jam and press, which is another problem he has. And he's not really a press man cornerback. His punch does not pack a lot of power. He's not going to be able to redirect you with his hands. But what he does do well is just cover people, which is what you want a cornerback to do, right? I think he anticipates really well. I think he does a nice job of crowding routes all the way throughout. He's another guy that suffers from grabbiness a little bit. He tends to grab, but he's got really good short area movement skills. He's got perfect fluidity that you want from a cornerback. He's got that explosiveness to really just trigger downhill and either come down on a route or the ball. And he finds the ball really well in the air. He doesn't quite have the length that you probably prefer. He's got sub 31-inch arms. It's like not bad, not terrible, but very mediocre. And there are some times where it just looks like the ball's just out of his reach. Like he plays it well at the catch point, but he just can't quite get there. But I'm so in love with the movement skills and just how well he's able to stick with guys, anticipate routes, and just find the ball in the air. He reads the quarterback's eyes in zone so well. Like it's almost like if you watch him passing off routes in zone coverage, like either if he's like rotating into, the half of the field deep zone guy in cover 2 or going downfield in cover 3, literally like any type of deep cover or shallow cover, he's got all of that down, and he's always playing with perfect timing, being able to keep an eye on the receiver, like even though he's got to watch the quarterback. Like I just feel like he's so in phase with everything he's got to do. Quick feet, good footwork. Hezekiah Massis rocks, and he reminds me of Adoree Jackson.
So, Ben, I love seeing you fired up. Tyler, how high do you have Massis?
Well, I was going to say I have some homework because I actually was not able to watch him in this week leading up to it. So I can't give a lot of comment. I did watch, or not watch, excuse me, but I did just take a look at his analytical profile. The biggest thing that stood out is the penalties, just a lot of penalties there, but can't comment really much more on that.
Okay.
I'm excited. I'm fired up to watch this guy.
He's fun to watch. He seriously might be the best zone eyes corner in this class. Like I give it to him over Terrell. That's how confident I am. I know, Cal, whatever, competition level. But it's not like this guy didn't see Chris Bell. He saw Chris Bell. And
they're ACC now, right? Like this is Power 4.
Yeah. And also, don't sleep on Cal. They've been a bit of a defensive back factory the last couple of years, or at least the last draft. They gave Noel Williams. You know him? Did you like Noel Williams coming out?
Oh yeah,
I like Noel Williams. I was a fan of him, and he actually had some really good moments this year for the Chiefs. Craig Woodson, he is a starter for the Patriots, and he's playing really good. Draft win of mine. I was on the Craig Woodson bandwagon. I was driving that bus, so I'm glad to see him perform well in the NFL too.
So Tyler, when you watch Massis, there is a corner on the other side named Brent Austin.
I've seen him as well.
I don't think Austin is going to grade as high as Massis, but most have a draftable grade on Austin too. Again, it's the other guy syndrome. If you're going to avoid Massis, you're going to pick on the other guy, but Austin is a draftable corner in his own right. So Tyler, what other corners, like in your top 10, have you not had a chance to pound the table for yet?
Yeah, let's talk about Devin Moore. I'm a Florida fan. I feel like I bring up a Florida guy every single episode, so we'll do it. He's such a good player when he plays. I wrote down that, so in 4 years at Florida, he played just over 1,000 snaps. For reference, Colton Hood this year played about 700 snaps. Like he's not played a ton because he's had 2 shoulder things, one of them surgery. He had a back thing. He's had ankles in spring practice. Like pretty much name a body part and he has hurt it at the University of Florida. But he's 6'3", he's 195. He can play press. He can play off. He has great instincts. There's some positional versatility there. When he was coming out of Naples in high school, there was a debate, is he going to play safety or is he going to play corner? And he ultimately ended up playing corner. But I think if you really wanted to, between the ball skills, the recognition, and he's a pretty good tackler, and then just the overall length, like I said, 6'3", long arms, I think he could play safety if you really wanted to. It's just going to be, I bet you there will be teams who just will not, he won't be on their board because he has so many injuries. But if you can get over that, I think you can get a really good player at a really good value. Again, if he can just play for you.
See, I think the film, to your point, is like the film consistently, no matter who I talk to, like that's a top 15 corner in the class.
It's really good. Like taking injuries out, I think he would easily be a top 100, could even creep into a top 75 type of guy.
Right. But my instinct is that the way the NFL values draft capital, he doesn't get picked until after pick 150.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, and it, like you said, where scheme versatility is so useful because then you can go to 20 teams instead of just 10 teams. It's the same thing, but just with injuries here, where there's, like I said, going to be, I don't know how many, but say 10 teams that are like, we're just not even going to think about drafting him. We're not going to do anything on him because the medicals are just not great.
Well, and we do on the channel like a lot of draft analysis of, how does a team get built? So essentially the way that I like to put it is that if a GM can hit on rounds 1 through 4 for 3 straight years, so that's 12 players, they did really well. Like really well. They've added 12 players to the core of their roster. Okay. So if you draft a player like Devin Moore, your risk of that going down to 11 out of 12 is quite high. So you just want to push that risk to a later round because it's not like the 6th round picks make it anyway. I mean, there's a reason that Puka dropped to where he did. He had an injury history in college, right? So there's a reason why Puka fell. But everybody in the draft community was saying the Rams got a steal. I mean, I was picking up Puka on all my fantasy teams his rookie year. That's why, that's one of the reasons I'm into the draft is because you can find those round 4 or 5 guys nobody's going to talk about in like the fantasy football circles.
But very useful for dynasty.
Yeah, if you grab them in the 3rd or 4th round of a dynasty draft, there's so little risk with that pick. You just have to know that player is a good player with injury history, that kind of thing. Okay, Tyler, any other corners? And we haven't talked about Keontae Scott yet. 23 years old.
Yep.
Some people have him graded as a safety. Some people say he's a boundary corner because he played boundary corner at Auburn, right? And I think he played boundary corner at Miami, but he could also play slot. So, Ben, how do you see Keontae Scott?
My comp for him was bargain bin Mike Hilton because that's the role he plays. He's not a long guy. He's not a big guy at all. He's a pretty decent athlete. He's not somebody I'd call like an incredible athlete. He's got good zone instincts, and he plays the hell out of the run.
Dude, like he is so fun to watch.
I'm so shocked by how strong he is relative to size. Yeah,
he blows people up. And that's why my comp from was actually CJ Gardner-Johnson. Shout out another Florida guy.
Really?
But like, not a good man cover guy at all. Can hang in zone, but amazing blitzer, amazing against the run, and then knows for the football. And that was CJ Gardner-Johnson coming out. I think their size is not quite on par with each other. And so that is where I think the comp falls apart. But just in terms of play style, what they're good at, what they're bad at, and then I think even what position they'll play. Because I see Scott as this like big nickel kind of thing in a bigger package / safety that you want more around the box than you do just floating out in open space.
You want him around the run.
Exactly. And that's what CJ Gardner-Johnson is like, hey, we don't really want him in open space or covering Justin Jefferson in the slot, but if we can just put him on the football, then we're going to be in a good spot. So that is how I see Scott.
Yeah, I do worry about the athleticism a little bit with Scott. It's not like he's a bad athlete. I just don't think he's super explosive into his cuts. Like when you ask him to mirror somebody one-on-one, you could just tell he's kind of gasping for air a little bit.
Not there,
He doesn't have the single coverage skills. But what I do like is he's disciplined in zone, and I think he anticipates the football really well when it's in the air. He breaks on the thrown football with the timing that you like from somebody in zone coverage. So he's this utility guy that does a lot of stuff that you like. What I also worry about too, he's the old guy that you were probably talking about. He's 24. He's a 24-year-old guy. I worry how much of this strength that you're showing to be able to stalemate blocks, to stack, peek, and shed, how much of that is coming from the fact that you are so much more physically developed than everybody around you? And is the jump to the NFL going to make you look a lot more pedestrian in that area? Because he never showed that at Auburn. He's been the guy on my watch list at Auburn because I liked the athlete. I saw fluidity with him. I saw some good zone instincts. So he's a guy that's kind of been on my radar a little bit, but I never saw him as this like hammer in the run game, you know? So I almost wonder how much of that is just because you are further along as an athlete, you know, strength-wise, where your weight is distributed, where your strength's distributed than like everybody else that you're going up against.
Yeah, and I think the way that I see that is he went from, we talked about boundary corner, just outside corner on the short side of the field, or for the people that maybe don't know the terminology there. And then he moved to the slot. And so I think that's why, like when you talk about where he's going to play, I'm not even thinking about him on the outside because it just wasn't great. And then he went to the slot and you're like, oh, he's unlocked as this guy who's a really good player.
Like he was in the box a lot.
Yeah. I mean, in Miami blitzed their nickel so much. That's just how their defense plays. Corey Heatherman from Minnesota.
That's another.
And so, yeah, he was just attack. We honestly, you kind of scout him in that way, like a linebacker, where you have these guys where you're like, hey, you don't really want him to read and react or be in zone coverage, but if you can just say, hey, see ball, hit ball, you're going to be great. And that's kind of Keionte Scott, not as bad. Like obviously he can play a little bit of zone coverage, not as much man as we were talking about, but that's, I guess the style is just like, if you can missile him to a spot, he will get there in a hurry and he will hurt somebody when he gets there.
Yeah.
And Keionte Scott is a player that I think draft Twitter is really high on.
Yes.
Like it just
really
like everybody's like top 50, top 75, right? But I want to remind everybody he's 23 years old and 24. He plays corner.
He'll be 24.
NFL likes young corners. It's a thing. So like I actually think Keionte Scott, if he had came out last year, we had him graded as a day 2 corner last year.
Last year?
Because when we do scouting reports, we tend to do 2 draft classes. So like we already have half of next year's wide receiver cornerback class grade. Right. But so we had a day 2 grade, like Randall and Bill had a day 2 grade on Scott. He chose to go back to school, transferred from Auburn to Miami. It was clearly a good move. He put some good tape out there to the point where now people are saying he's top 50. But again, like my advice, if players are watching the podcast, the NFL doesn't like 23-year-old draft prospects. You are better off being a round 5, 22-year-old than going into the draft as a 23-year-old unless you're a quarterback. Yeah. It's just, and I'm not the one that makes the rules. I'm just trying to read the tea leaves. Yeah. Right. And maybe I'm illiterate. Maybe I don't read the tea leaves right. It's very possible. But generally speaking, my prediction is that Keionte Scott is going to be drafted later than draft Twitter and people that appear on the podcast channel have. Yeah. The tape is phenomenal, right? And we saw him make big plays in the biggest games of the year, right? But he's 23 years old.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I got him to. I got a round 3 to 4 grade on him. I don't have a second round grade like a lot of other people do. Yeah. And 24, by the way, on draft night, even older than 23. He'll be 24 on draft night.
That's about where I have him as well. Like firmly as a top 100 guy, not as a top 50 guy.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to come in here and not be the party pooper on Keionte Scott. I was fully expecting that.
No. And I think people this is where there's just such wild swings. This is the draft in general. Everybody's got to be out there like, oh, I'm way higher on this guy. I'm putting this, I'm ignoring these like flaws because, oh, here's this cut up I made of a minute and a half of him looking phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I'm like that. I feel bad just being like, he's a good player. He's a useful player. I think especially I keep bringing up when we talk about corners, but in an age of bigger offensive personnel, I think that bumps his value up even in terms of how he plays. But even still, it's like there are just some pretty glaring flaws, and that's going to hold him back, at least for me, in terms of where I can rank him overall.
And I don't think they're flaws that he can like get coached out of him too. Like I just think it's an athleticism thing. he's got short strides. What can you do? He's a small guy.
Yeah, and Ben, I'm less focused on the grade and more focused on my vision for the channel is cover the players in the draft, because I'm looking, for example, at your 15, and then if we look at Anthony dropping his top 15 in the chat, there's one. Okay, so McKinney went back to school.
Yeah.
Dixon
from UNC.
Dixon should be. Yeah, that's Thaddeus Dixon, not Duke. UNC, the other color blue. Yep.
North Carolina,
and then
similar.
Igbinosun, and then Everett, and then Stooks, Demings, right? So I think what Anthony can point out, if we look at his top players, is that there's a tier, and if I'm looking at Ben's board, there's a tier probably after Cisse of about 20 players. That's how deep the cornerback class is. Because generally speaking, the players that we talked about at the top, so McCoy, Delane, Hood, Terrell, Abney, Masses, Johnson, Pons, Cisse, most of those players are going to be in everybody's top 10 except Masses. Generally speaking, right? So I listed 9 players, and then subtract Masses. Those 8 players are generally going to appear in everybody's top 10. I think they appeared in Tyler's top 10 too.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. They're in a different order, right? So we know who the top guys are. But that next tier of 20, you figure on your graphic, Ben, there's 8. Anthony put another 8 in the chat. Tyler's still building his board. But those guys are going to be sorted in different orders. I'd rather make sure that people know who the players are, not what their ranking is. So even though, I say, point out with Keontae Scott, everybody loves him, but he's 23, right? I'll sound like a broken record because we do cornerback podcasts like this every other week. It's just different podcasters doing it. That's get people familiar, get the fans familiar with the names that are in the draft class. That's the
and then goal. They can make their decisions from there. Yeah.
Yeah. But why don't we pause for podcaster identification? Tyler, do you want to let everybody know about all of the sports coverage that you do?
Yeah. So got the Twitter right here at Tyler_Hill5. So you can follow me there. I'm going to be trying to post more draft content, as well as on TikTok at the Hill_sports, I think it is. It's the Hill Sports. If you just Google that, or Google TikTok, search that, you'll be able to find it. Also, if you guys have either an Apple TV, Roku, or Amazon Fire Stick, you can check me and my co-host Ethan out on the WCIA 3+ app. That's where I work for, and that's where we do Midwest Mashup, which is a podcast talking about the pro sports in Chicago, Indianapolis, and St. Louis. We're here in Champaign, Illinois. That's the feeder cities that come here. So just covering a lot of Bears and Colts. We just did an off-season preview for them. So free agents, draft, cuts, everything like that. And then now we're going full out in things like basketball for the Bulls and Pacers, fun trade deadline for both of those, some off-season baseball signings, and then hockey. Neither team is doing very well in the Blackhawks or the Blues, but there's a lot of fun there because Connor Bedard is an amazing player for the Blackhawks. So you can check us out there, and then I'll be posting some draft stuff on my own personal channels.
Ben, your first time coming on Draft Professor. Do you want to let everybody know about all your social medias, any other podcasts you have, and the things that you like to do?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's my first time doing a lot of things in terms of the NFL draft stuff. So this has been just kind of a hobby of mine for a while. I just kind of I like to scout the players. I like to watch the L22 and do write-ups. I'm just now kind of getting started as somebody who's trying to get into content, trying to get into, the evaluation community. So I've got a Twitter right there, Draft Day Ben, and I've also got a YouTube called Draft Day Ben that has absolutely nothing on it, but it will. So if you'd like to subscribe, be my guest.
Oh, well, Ben, if this was the first time you did this, I could not tell.
Oh yeah. I did some stuff for ESPN Cleveland. I had an internship with ESPN Cleveland recently. I kind of informally became their draft guy. I'm still in contact with them. My internship ended, so I'm not sitting in on every show now, but I'm still in contact with them. So maybe, I guess I have had some experience. They would give me a 10-minute-ish mock draft segment. So I've been on air, but, still very new.
Go ahead, Tyler. I thought you were going to say something. Go for it.
Oh, well, if we are about to cycle out, could we do like 2 minutes on the small corners? Because I think this is something that a lot of people would have questions about. So D'Angelo Pons and Chandler Rivers, the like 5'9".
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I thought we had gone through all your lists, but no, yeah, let's keep going.
Because, man, D'Angelo Pons is really cool. There are just there are so many pros. He's quick out of his breaks. He is physical at both the line of scrimmage and in tackling. He only had a 2% missed tackle rate at 5'9", 173. We'll see if it's an actual 173 when we get to the combine and weigh-ins and things like that, because it looks like he might even be a little bit smaller. And that is the con, right? Is that he is 5'9", 173. And so I'm interested to see where you're at, Ben, because I just went back and forth of like, man, he is a bulldog and he is so good in zone. The technique is phenomenal. The quickness, I have some more questions on maybe long speed, but the quickness in short areas is so there. He's sticky. A coach's dream in that way. But I saw a lot of people saying, oh, you can't knock him for the size because it doesn't pop up on film. And I just have to flat out disagree. Like it does. There's specifically a play when they're playing Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game.
Watch them against Ohio State.
And so there's 2 plays, actually. There's a curl route that Jeremiah Smith runs. And he actually, again, this is all the good he has. He recognizes it, boom, instantly. But instead of driving straight to it, he has to try to work in a circle around Smith because he knows, hey, I don't have the length where I can just go and shoot my hands and break it up. I have to try and work around. And so Smith ends up making a catch. That's a 15-yard gain. And then first down Ohio State. And then there was obviously the big play as well, where he's trying to play catch coverage, which is where you don't actually backpedal back. You're just trying to catch a guy at a certain depth.
Yeah.
And Smith just goes and boop, shove, and he's gone. Like,
speed bump. Yeah,
exactly. And so this is another guy. We talked about Devin Moore with the injuries taking off of some teams' boards. We talked about Keontae Scott with his age taking off some teams' boards. D'Angelo Pons is not going to be on some teams' boards because of the size. And so I have him at 10 right now. That's in that Keontae Scott-ish, Devin Moore-ish range. Basically, this is a guys that play well, but just have glaring red flags or question marks. That's that tier that I have. But I want him to be good so bad. And so I'm interested to see if you had that same read.
Yeah, I do. If I wrote down in my notes here 2 things I want to share. If he were a regular sized corner, he would be the number 1 corner in the class.
Oh, could you imagine if he was 6 foot 190? I mean, goodness.
And he plays with 150% energy all the time, and he's so physical, even though he doesn't quite have the traits. I also wrote, if he were a regular sized corner, he may have killed someone on the field at this point.
Dude, the hit in the national championship game, that tight end that went on a wheel route. Yeah, and he lit him up. So he does, and people say this a lot when it comes to smaller players, but this is actually true for him. He plays bigger than his size, but his size is just so small that even with that, you still see it pop up.
Yeah, and he does have a really good effect on the catch point. Like, what you worry about with the smaller guys is like, are they going to be able to win in 50-50 situations? And I think he showed that on tape. He has enough want to, which I think is a huge part of it. He doesn't have the length, but he's able to find the ball in the air. Like, he's disciplined. He's sticky. Like, he'll stay close to you. Like, he's a guy that's going to get boxed out by contact sometimes. Like, if you're going to go head-to-head with him trying to win the jump ball, if you're a bigger receiver, you're probably going to win. He's going to try. He's going to give you problems.
Yes.
But you're probably going to win more often than somebody else. But if you're somebody who's maybe even just like an average-sized wide receiver, I thought his catch point tape was really freaking good.
Yes.
Like, if you're somebody who even is close, like within like 4 inches of 5'9", or just within like 20 pounds of his weight, I think he's got a pretty good chance that he's going to be able to, maybe 15 pounds. I'll go 15 pounds. Yeah, that's a little much, 20. I think he's going to be able to win at the catch point a lot more often than he loses. Like, he showed it. He showed that.
And especially if it's not jump balls, it's more like driving down on things. He's pretty good in that scenario.
Stuff. Yeah. Like, not true, like, going one-on-one downfield with somebody and the back shoulders being thrown. Like, you're talking about like coming down from off coverage. Like, that stuff he's got on lock. Mm-hmm. Like, I think he's great at that stuff. especially in zone. He's another one of those guys that I just love the anticipation.
Dude, it's crazy. I mean, the pick six versus Oregon, right? Like that's the teach
Yes.
tape.
Yeah. I believe he was the flat guy in cover 2, right? On that one.
Yes.
That wasn't man. That was zone. Yeah. So he read that. He broke on it almost before Dante Moore threw the ball and he took it to the house. He's got that kind of stuff like all over his tape. He's very heady. And he's also great at mirroring. He's great at mirroring and anticipating routes. He's just one of those guys that, like, if he were normal size, he would be so good. He's my number one corner in the class. He does all the corner stuff you want other than, like, be big and strong.
So, and then you said the other smaller corner was Chandler Rivers that you wanted to talk about, Tyler?
He's the one that is from Duke. And I'm just lower on him, right? Like, because he is small, right? He's a little bit thicker, right? Because he came in at 185 in the Senior Bowl. And so, whereas Pons is around 170, 175, Rivers is 5'9", but just a little bit thicker, a little bit stronger. And so, but like, if you're going to be small, I need you to be Pons, where everything else is on point. Rivers is not. I watched the UConn game, and they have Skylar Bell. Skylar Bell's a good player. He's probably a top 100-ish receiver in this class, consensus-wise. Jim, you can correct me if that's
no, you got it.
Okay, so good player, right? But he was eating his lunch, and it wasn't even just Skylar Bell. There was a random receiver that I didn't even get the chance to look up who he was, who like fried him on a go route, right? And so, if you're gonna be 5'9", if you're gonna be 185, if you're gonna have these shorter arms, you just have to be close to perfect in everything else. And I don't see that from Rivers. The other thing, he's not sticky on breaks. Like he's getting broken off. So I guess pretty much everything we said about Pons, we're like, man, it would be awesome if he were also 6 foot. It's like that stuff isn't there for Rivers. And then he, it just doesn't have the size. So I've seen him getting some really top second round buzz and some different things that I've just been looking at on Twitter. And I just don't get it. And I don't understand it. I would not want to take him, day 2. This would be a day 3 flyer type of guy for me.
It goes back to you want to pick a player on day 2 that will be on your roster in 3 years.
Yeah.
It's contributing to your team, right? As a significant role player or a starter. And there's too much risk with Rivers, right? And it's the GM has to balance really good tape with job security, right? And if somebody's a statistical outlier, save those for rounds 5 through 7.
Yeah. You can find at least one instance of Rivers getting burned on a route break, like per game.
Yep. And like bad too. It's not even just that he's kind of there, but maybe not completely in phase. It's like, oh, he's not within 5 yards.
He's not explosive. He's another one of those guys that just does not have the carry into his cuts that you want. Like, I think he's fluid. I don't think he's tight. I don't think that's the problem.
See, and I'm even like the UConn game, I was like, because especially there's this rep that really stood out. It was a slant. I can't remember if it was Bell or if it was that other UConn receiver I was talking about. But he diamond released a slant, which means he's pressing outside and then boom, pops it inside. And this is one of my favorite releases. It's really tough if you don't have great hips because you're turning outside a little bit because he shows that outside release. And then you got to boom, right? And you got to boom and come across to be able to make the play. And like late turn, trips over himself and falls. And I was like, oh, you cannot, again, you can't be doing things like this if you're also going to be 5'9", 180.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it's important we do touch on the positives of Chandler Rivers. He does have positives.
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
So yeah, I've got a 4th round grade on Rivers, and that's kind of 3rd round is more so where I'm targeting either guys that could feasibly improve that have like a high athletic ceiling or key role players, and 4th round is more just guys that I think are going to be good role players, like fine role players.
Yep.
I could see Chandler Rivers being a solid dime corner in a zone scheme because I think he does have disciplined zone eyes. I think he does pass off routes well with good timing. You don't catch him getting locked onto a guy for too long and then just getting moved out of position. I think he does a decent job of squeezing routes when they come into his zone. And I think the lack of athleticism will play a little bit better in the slot than it does on the outside. Because, if you're going to play outside corner, you need to have length. You need to have that explosiveness and that deep speed. He doesn't have any of that. I think it plays a little bit better in the slot, but Then again, the reason you can't get too high on him is because now we're talking about the modern day NFL slot. We're not talking about like little like Wes Welker. We're talking about like Puka Nakuas. They want guys that could throw crackback blocks.
I was 10 years ago, you throw him in that slot spot and be like, he's going up against, like you said, Wes Welker, or like Khalil Shakir is going to be everybody's slot receiver. And so it's like, oh, we'll put him in the slot, it'll be fine. But you can't just throw guys there anymore.
No. Yeah, I want my slot to be versatile. I want him to be like physical enough, even if he's small. Just be physical. Just be decently strong so you're not getting boxed out all the time by these big slots. Chandler Rivers doesn't quite have that, but I do like his eyes in zone coverage, and I do think that he plays with anticipation, and I do think he finds the ball well when it's in the air. He reads the quarterback's eyes well and breaks down on it. Like he's a disciplined player. He's just a limited player, a very limited player, and
that's a great way to describe him. I like how you
don't put him in press man. Do not do
on it.
Okay. Any other corners? I'm glad that you flagged me before I shut down the show there, Tyler.
Because I think those are the controversial guys, right? Because of the size and just there seems to be wide-ranging values on them.
Yep, and we're prepping for a 7-round mock, so you're going to hear all of these corner names and more because, like as Anthony proved in the chat, there's still 8 guys that Anthony has graded that you guys haven't talked about.
Right, yeah.
I could throw another 15 names that Anthony didn't list that we didn't talk about either. So, I mean, there's a group of 25 corners that are pretty much like players 11 through 35 on the big board that we could be talking about here that are going to be drafted. On average, 33 corners are drafted every year. And I mean, we've podcasted on like 40 or 48 corners already. So you can like go back to the podcast channel. If you're listening to the podcast, there's a cornerback playlist on Draft Professor. You can go and find even more corners. You'll see Ian Cummings and other popular draft people breaking down the corner class. So there's a lot. We'll be covering them. We have a 7-round mock draft that's coming up in about 7 or 8 weeks. So we'll be talking about each of them when somebody picks them in a mock. So with that being said, I do want to remind everybody watching, if you're watching on YouTube and you can go to Draft Professor and hit subscribe, that would be a huge thank you. In addition to that, Draft Professor every Friday does a 3-round mock draft live. Anthony was there yesterday picking for Miami. I know he talked about picking Tacario Davis. He drafted a safety. I think it was Bud Clark. And I don't remember who the other corner was that he took. But like Anthony's picking for Miami. And, you know, we can get different people picking for Cleveland or Chicago or whoever. And you'll get to see. Yeah. You'll get to see different people's opinions of where players are valued. For example, somebody might be picking A.J. Halsey at pick 33. You may have not realized that somebody might grade A.J. Halsey that high, but there are at least 2 people that do, right? Same thing, like some people pick Zion Young at pick 32. There's at least 4 people that value Zion Young that high, but you may have not known that if the only draft simulator you use is one that has Zion Young with a late 2nd-round grade. So you will learn a lot more from our 3-round mock than you will from what I call a linear draft board. Because when you have 32 people, there's 32 draft boards, and that adds a significant amount of variation. So with that being said, for myself, Tyler, Ben, the 110 podcasters at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy your Saturday. We'll see you on a podcast tomorrow morning. Thank you, everybody.